Derek grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks and shoved me against the kitchen counter. Listen, old man, I need $5,000 by Friday, not next month, not when it's convenient. Friday. You're living in my house, eating my food. You'll give me that money or you can find somewhere else to live. I steadied myself against the counter, my heart pounding, but my mind staying calm the way it had through 40 years of high-pressure audits. Derek, I don't have $5,000 to give you. I've explained this before. My retirement income is fixed. I can't just produce money on demand. Bullshit. You worked for 40 years. You must have savings somewhere. Stop being selfish and help your family. I've already given you $12,000 this year alone. How much more do you need? Derek's face reddened. That wasn't a gift. That was rent. You're living here for free, taking up space. The least you can do is contribute financially instead of being a burden. He released my arm and stormed out of the kitchen. I heard his truck start in the driveway moments later, tires squealing as he drove away. I stood there for a full minute, my arm throbbing where he'd grabbed it, thinking about what I'd just heard. Not a gift. Rent. Burden. My name is Robert Pearson. I'm 65 years old. For 40 years, I worked as a certified public accountant, starting in a small firm right out of college and eventually becoming a senior partner at Pearson & Associates, specializing in tax planning and estate management for high net worth clients. I retired 3 years ago after my wife Margaret died from complications related to diabetes. She was 62. We'd been married 37 years. After Margaret's death, I sold our house in the suburbs. Too many memories, too much empty space for one person. I moved into a modest apartment, lived simply, and tried to figure out what retirement looked like for a widower with no real hobbies except work. My daughter Emily suggested I move in with her and her husband Derek. They had a large house with a spare bedroom. Emily said it would be nice to have me closer, that her kids would love having Grandpa around, that I wouldn't have to live alone. It sounded reasonable at the time. Emily was my only child. Her 2 kids, Sophia and Jake, were 8 and 6. I'd see them regularly instead of occasional weekend visits. I'd be part of a family again instead of alone in an apartment, and Emily seemed genuinely happy about the arrangement. Derek had agreed, though less enthusiastically. Sure, Bob can move in, he'd said when Emily first proposed the idea, as long as he helps with expenses. We can't carry another person financially. Of course, I'd said. I'll contribute to groceries and utilities. Whatever's fair. That was 2.5 years ago. Since then, Derek's demands for money had become increasingly frequent and aggressive. It started small. Can you cover groceries this week? I'm between paychecks. Then, I need $2,000 for car repairs. Can you lend it to me? Then, the property tax is due. Give me $4,000. I'd given him money each time, not because I couldn't say no, but because I thought he was genuinely struggling financially. Derek worked in sales for a medical equipment company. The pay was decent, but apparently inconsistent, and Emily didn't work outside the home, focusing on raising Sophia and Jake. I understood financial pressure. I'd experienced it myself early in my career, but Derek never paid me back, and his requests became demands, and his tone became hostile. And now, physical aggression, shoving, grabbing, threats about finding somewhere else to live. What Derek didn't know, what nobody knew except my attorney and my financial advisor, was that I wasn't a struggling retiree living on a fixed income. I was worth approximately $4.7 million. I'd spent 40 years as a CPA managing other people's wealth. I'd learned how to invest conservatively, how to minimize taxes, how to build assets slowly and steadily without drawing attention. When Margaret and I sold our house after retirement, we'd netted $850,000. I'd invested that carefully in index funds, municipal bonds, and dividend-paying stocks. Combined with my retirement accounts, pension, and savings accumulated over 4 decades, my net worth was substantial. But I lived modestly. I drove a 12-year-old Toyota. I wore clothes from discount stores. I lived in that apartment for $570 a month. To anyone looking at my lifestyle, I appeared to be exactly what I claimed. A retiree on Social Security and a small pension, living carefully within limited means. Why did I hide my wealth? Several reasons. First, privacy. I'd spent my career watching wealthy people become targets for family members, scammers, and opportunists. I'd seen families torn apart by inheritance disputes before the elderly person was even dead. I valued peace and privacy over displays of wealth. Second, I wanted to know how people treated me without money influencing their behavior. Would my daughter love me if I were broke? Would Derek respect me if I had nothing to give? Those questions mattered. Third, and most importantly, I'd learned to be careful. Margaret and I had raised Emily to be independent and responsible, but we'd also seen how marriage could change people. Derek had always seemed slightly off to me. Too charming. Too quick with excuses for why jobs didn't work out, why bills were late, why he needed to borrow money from Emily's parents. I'd never fully trusted him. Hiding my wealth felt like prudent risk management. Now, standing in the kitchen with my arm throbbing from Derek's grip, I was glad I'd been cautious. Because Derek wasn't struggling financially due to bad luck. He was struggling because he was financially irresponsible, impulsive, and increasingly aggressive about extracting money from anyone available. I rolled up my sleeve and examined the bruises already forming on my arm, purple marks in the shape of Derek's fingers, physical evidence of assault. I took photographs with my phone from multiple angles, making sure the bruising was clearly visible. Then, I sat down at the small desk in my bedroom and opened the file I'd been keeping for the past 18 months. The file was labeled Derek Financial Requests, Documentation. It contained every request for money Derek had made, every amount I'd given him, every promise to repay that he'd broken. $12,400 total over the past year. $28,000 over 2.5 years. Not $1 repaid. I added today's incident to the file. Date, time, Derek's demand for $5,000, his physical aggression, his statement that previous money given was rent, not gifts, his threat about finding somewhere else to live. I attached the photographs of the bruises. Then, I saved everything to both my computer and a secure cloud backup. 40 years as a CPA had taught me one fundamental principle. Document everything. Documentation protects you. Documentation proves truth when someone tries to lie. Documentation turns, he said, she said, into verifiable fact. I'd been documenting Derek's behavior since I started noticing the pattern of aggression and financial exploitation. But I'd been careful not to let him know. I maintained my role as the modest, slightly confused retiree who couldn't quite keep up with modern technology or financial complexity. I let him think I was vulnerable, because I was building a case, not yet sure what kind of case or what action I'd eventually take, but building it nonetheless. And now, with physical assault added to financial exploitation, the case was becoming clearer. I heard Emily's car in the driveway an hour later. She'd been at the grocery store with the kids. I heard Sophia and Jake's voices, excited about something, then Emily calling out, "Dad, are you home?" I came out of my bedroom. "I'm here." Emily looked tired, carrying grocery bags with both kids hanging on her. "Can you help bring in the rest of the groceries?" "There are 4 more bags in the car." "Of course." I brought in the remaining bags, helped put away groceries, and listened to Sophia tell me about her school project on butterflies. Jake showed me a toy he'd begged Emily to buy. Normal family moments that felt increasingly wrong given what I now knew about Derek's view of my presence here. After the kids went to play in their rooms, Emily made coffee and sat at the kitchen table looking exhausted. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." "What's wrong?" "Derek's worried about money. The medical equipment sales have been slow. We're behind on the mortgage. He's stressed about bills. And he thinks maybe we need to discuss you contributing more to household expenses." "I already give Derek money regularly, Emily. Almost $30,000 over 2 years. "I know, and we appreciate that. But Derek thinks maybe a more formal arrangement would help, like actual rent payments every month, something structured." "How much rent does Derek think is fair?" "He mentioned $1,500 a month." I did the math instantly. $1,500 monthly was $18,000 annually. For a spare bedroom in a house Derek didn't own outright, in an arrangement Emily had originally described as family helping family. That was approximately 3 times the market rate for a room rental in this area. That seems high, I said carefully. I know, Dad. But Derek says we're providing everything: food, utilities, space, and he says you can afford it from your pension. What do you think, Emily? Do you think I should be paying $18,000 a year to live in your spare bedroom? Emily looked uncomfortable. I don't know. I just know Derek's stressed about money and he thinks this would help. Has Derek told you he's asked me for $5,000 today? Or that he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises when I said I didn't have it? Emily's face paled. He did what? I rolled up my sleeve, showing her the purple fingerprint marks on my arm. He got physical. He called me a burden. He said I'm living in his house and eating his food, and if I don't give him money, I should find somewhere else to live. Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Derek didn't tell me about any of this. I don't think Derek tells you a lot of things, Emily. She looked at the bruises, then at me, her eyes filling with tears. I'll talk to him. This isn't okay. You're not a burden. You're my father. I wanted you here. I know you did. But I'm starting to think Derek had different reasons for agreeing. After Emily went upstairs, presumably to call Derek, I returned to my bedroom and added this conversation to my documentation file. Emily's surprise at the bruises, her apparent lack of knowledge about Derek's aggressive behavior, the fact that Derek was positioning financial exploitation as helping the family rather than what it actually was. That evening, Derek came home and immediately went upstairs without acknowledging me. I heard raised voices through the ceiling. Emily's voice, upset. Derek's voice, defensive and angry. The argument lasted 20 minutes, then silence. The next morning, Derek appeared in the kitchen while I was making coffee. Bob, I'm sorry about yesterday. I was stressed about work. I shouldn't have grabbed you like that. It won't happen again. Thank you for the apology. But we do need to talk about the financial arrangement here. $1,500 a month, starting next month. That's fair for everything we provide. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. We need that money. Over the next week, I noticed Derek going through my room when I was out. Small things moved, papers slightly disturbed, my laptop screen showing someone had tried to access it. He was looking for something. Probably financial information, bank statements, investment accounts, anything showing I had more money than I claimed. He wouldn't find anything. I kept no financial documents in the house. Everything was digital, password protected, and backed up securely. My bank statements went to a P.O. box Derek didn't know existed. My investment statements were paperless, accessible only through encrypted accounts. After 40 years protecting clients' financial information, I knew how to protect my own. But Derek's snooping told me something important. He wasn't just exploiting a convenient source of money, he was actively investigating my finances. He wanted to know exactly what I had. That suggested something more calculated than simple greed. 2 weeks after the kitchen incident, I found what Derek was really planning. I'd woken early on a Saturday morning. Derek and Emily were still asleep. The kids were at a sleepover at friends' houses. The house was quiet. I went to the kitchen for coffee and noticed Derek's laptop open on the dining room table, still powered on from the night before. I shouldn't have looked. Privacy, ethics, basic respect for boundaries. But I'd become increasingly concerned about Derek's behavior, his snooping in my room, his escalating financial demands. So I looked at the screen. It displayed a legal website, specifically a page about conservatorship proceedings in Connecticut, how to petition the court to have someone declared mentally incompetent, how to become their conservator, managing their finances and making decisions on their behalf, when such petitions were appropriate for elderly family members for their own protection. I scrolled through his browsing history. He'd been researching this for weeks, pages about elder incompetency, pages about signs of dementia and cognitive decline, pages about what evidence courts require to grant conservatorship, pages about what powers a conservator has over an incompetent person's assets. My blood ran cold. Derek wasn't just trying to extract money from me. He was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take legal control of everything I owned. He thought I was a confused, declining retiree with some modest savings that he could seize through a conservatorship fraud. What he didn't know was that I was a CPA with 40 years of experience, fully mentally competent, and worth nearly $5 million. And now I had proof that he was planning to commit conservatorship fraud against me. I took photographs of every page on his laptop screen, his browsing history, the specific legal websites he'd visited, emails to a lawyer named Frank Morrison inquiring about conservatorship proceedings, a draft document listing concerns about Robert Pearson's mental competency that included fabricated examples, forgets conversations, seems confused about dates, poor judgment with money. All lies, all fabricated to create a false case for incompetency. I photographed everything, uploaded the images to my secure cloud storage, and left Derek's laptop exactly as I'd found it. Then I returned to my room and started planning. Derek had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed I was exactly what I appeared, a vulnerable, declining old man with limited resources and no ability to defend himself. He'd underestimated me completely. That underestimation would destroy him. I spent the rest of that weekend organizing my evidence and planning my next steps. I had documentation of Derek's financial exploitation, $28,000 extracted over 2 years through manipulation and increasingly aggressive demands. I had evidence of physical assault, photographs of bruises, documented threats, and now I had proof of his plan to commit conservatorship fraud, his research, his communications with an attorney, his fabricated concerns about my mental state. What I needed now was professional advice, legal counsel from someone who specialized in elder law and financial exploitation, someone who could help me not just defend against Derek's scheme, but also ensure Emily and the grandchildren weren't damaged by what came next, because this was going to end badly for Derek. But Emily was my daughter. Sophia and Jake were my grandchildren. Whatever action I took against Derek, I needed to protect them from collateral damage. On Monday morning, I called a law firm I'd worked with during my CPA career, Morrison & Chen, specializing in estate law, elder law, and financial exploitation cases. I asked specifically for Angela Chen, an attorney in her 50s who'd built a reputation for aggressive advocacy for elderly clients facing family exploitation. Angela, this is Robert Pearson. I don't know if you remember me, but we worked together on several estate cases about 8 years ago. Robert, of course I remember. You retired a few years ago, didn't you? How are you? I'm being financially exploited and physically assaulted by my son-in-law, who is also planning to file fraudulent conservatorship proceedings to have me declared mentally incompetent so he can steal my assets. I need legal representation immediately. There was a brief pause. Then Angela's voice became completely focused. Are you safe right now? Yes, I'm calling from my car. Derek thinks I'm at the library. How much time do we have before he files the conservatorship petition? I don't know. Based on his research, he's in the planning stages, but it could be days or weeks. Can you come to my office this afternoon, 2 o'clock? I'll be there. Robert, bring everything you have, every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence. We're going to stop this before it starts, and we're going to make sure your son-in-law faces consequences for what he's planning. I hung up and sat in my car in the library parking lot, thinking about what came next. I'd spent 2.5 years being the quiet, compliant retiree who did what he was told and didn't cause problems. I'd let Derek think he was in control, think he was manipulating a confused old man who wouldn't fight back. That performance ended today. Now, Derek would learn who he'd actually been threatening. Not a vulnerable elderly man with modest means and declining capacity. A CPA with 40 years of experience documenting fraud, $4.7 million in hidden assets, and the professional knowledge to destroy anyone stupid enough to try conservatorship fraud against him. Derek had picked the wrong target, and he was about to discover that the hard way. So far, Robert discovered his son-in-law Derek had physically assaulted him, extracted $28,400 over 2.5 years, and was planning conservatorship fraud to have Robert declared mentally incompetent. What Derek didn't know, Robert is a CPA with $4.7 million in hidden wealth and 40 years of documentation expertise. After photographing Derek's laptop showing the conservatorship research and fabricated evidence, Robert contacted elder law attorney Angela Chen. Now, at 2 p.m., the meeting that will destroy Derek's scheme begins. Angela Chen's office was in downtown Hartford on the 14th floor of a building overlooking the Connecticut River. I arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a leather briefcase containing printed copies of everything I'd documented over the past 18 months. Angela met me in the reception area herself, shaking my hand firmly. "Robert, thank you for coming. Let's use the conference room. I want my partner Michael Morrison to join us. He specializes in conservatorship defense and has extensive experience with elder exploitation cases." Michael Morrison was in his early 60s, with silver hair and the careful demeanor of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. He shook my hand and gestured to the conference table where 3 legal pads were already positioned with pens. "Mr. Pearson, Angela briefed me on your situation. Before we look at your evidence, I need to ask some direct questions. Are you currently taking any medications that affect cognitive function?" "No medications except a statin for cholesterol. My most recent physical was 3 months ago. Clean bill of health." "Any history of memory problems, confusion, or cognitive decline?" "None. I manage all my own finances, file my own taxes, and maintain complex investment portfolios without assistance." "When's your birthday?" "March 14th, 1960. "What's today's date?" "Monday, November 8th, 2025. "Who's the current president?" I answered that, and several more questions testing memory, orientation, and basic knowledge. Michael made notes, then nodded to Angela. "His mental status is clearly intact. Any conservatorship petition based on claimed incompetence would fail immediately once a judge actually spoke with him. But let's see what evidence you've collected." I opened my briefcase and laid out the documentation systematically. First, the financial exploitation file, showing every request Derek had made, every amount I'd given, every broken promise to repay. $28,400 over 30 months. "Did you give this money as loans or gifts?" Angela asked. Derek characterized them as loans initially. "I'll pay you back next month," he'd say, but he never repaid anything. Then last week he told me the money was actually rent for living in his house. He's retroactively redefining gifts as payment for housing. "That's financial exploitation under Connecticut law," Michael said, "especially combined with the coercive tactics and physical assault. Show us the assault evidence." I pulled out the photographs of the bruises on my arm. Purple fingerprints clearly visible, date and timestamp showing they were taken immediately after the incident, a written account of exactly what Derek had said and done. "Did you report this to police?" Angela asked. "No. I wanted to consult with attorneys first to understand the full scope of what Derek was planning before taking action." "Wise decision." "A police report now, after we understand the conservatorship fraud attempt, will be more effective than an immediate report would have been. What else do you have?" I showed them the photographs from Derek's laptop, his browsing history showing weeks of research on conservatorship proceedings, his emails to attorney Frank Morrison. Most damaging, his draft document listing fabricated concerns about my mental competency. Michael read through the fabricated evidence carefully, making notes. "Forgets conversations. Confused about dates. Poor judgment with money. These are standard elements in legitimate conservatorship petitions for people with actual dementia. Your son-in-law clearly researched what claims would be most effective." "But they're all false," I said. "I don't forget conversations. I'm not confused about dates, and my judgment with money is excellent, as 40 years as a CPA demonstrates." "We know that," Angela said, "and we can prove it. What we need to understand is Derek's motivation. Why does he think you're worth the effort of a conservatorship fraud? What does he believe you have that's worth this level of effort?" "That's the critical question," I said, "because Derek thinks I'm a struggling retiree living on Social Security and a modest pension. He doesn't know my actual financial situation." "Which is?" Michael asked. I handed them a summary document prepared by my financial advisor. Net worth, $4,700,000. Assets included retirement accounts, investment portfolios, municipal bonds, and cash reserves. All managed professionally, all generating income well above what my lifestyle suggested. Angela and Michael looked at the document, then at each other, then at me. You're worth almost $5 million, Angela said slowly, and you've been living like you're barely surviving on Social Security. Why? Privacy. Security. And because I wanted to see how people treated me without money influencing their behavior. I've spent 40 years watching wealthy people become targets. I decided to avoid that by appearing to have nothing worth targeting. Except Derek targeted you anyway, Michael observed. He thinks you have some modest savings, maybe $50,000 or $100,000, enough to make a conservatorship worthwhile for him to control. He has no idea he's actually attempting to defraud someone worth nearly $5 million. Correct. And when he discovers my actual net worth during any conservatorship proceeding, he'll realize he's committed fraud against someone with the resources to destroy him legally. Angela smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. This changes everything. Derek isn't just attempting conservatorship fraud against a vulnerable elderly person. He's attempting it against a financially sophisticated CPA with extensive assets and the ability to mount a devastating legal defense. We're going to use that. Over the next 2 hours, we built a comprehensive legal strategy. First, we would document my complete mental competence through formal evaluation. Angela arranged for Dr. Patricia Williams, a neuropsychologist who specialized in competency evaluations, to conduct a full cognitive assessment the next day. Dr. Williams will administer standardized tests measuring memory, judgment, reasoning ability, and executive function, Angela explained. When you score in the normal to superior range, which I'm confident you will, we'll have expert testimony that any conservatorship petition is baseless. Second, we would secure my assets against any attempt by Derek to access them. Michael would work with my financial advisor to implement additional protections, requiring dual authorization for any account changes, flagging any unusual access attempts, and preparing documentation showing I actively managed my own finances. Third, we would prepare a preemptive legal filing. If Derek filed a conservatorship petition, we'd immediately respond with evidence of his financial exploitation, physical assault, and fraudulent fabrication of incompetency claims. We'd also file for a restraining order, preventing him from having any contact with me or any access to my financial information. We're going to turn his attack into his destruction, Angela said. He thinks he's hunting a weak target. He's actually about to be destroyed by someone who knows exactly how to defend against fraud, because that's what you did for 40 years. What about Emily? I asked. My daughter. She's married to Derek, but she's not part of this scheme. She didn't know about the conservatorship plan or the extent of Derek's financial demands. I don't want her hurt by what happens to Derek. Angela nodded. We'll be careful. Emily may be an innocent victim here too. But understand, Robert, when this becomes public, when Derek faces legal consequences, Emily's marriage will likely end. You can't protect her from that. I know, but I want her to understand I'm not attacking her. I'm defending myself against her husband's fraud. We'll make that clear. The meeting ended at 5:30. I drove back to Emily's house with copies of everything we'd discussed, plus a plan for the next 72 hours. Tomorrow, cognitive evaluation with Dr. Williams. Wednesday, meeting with my financial advisor to implement asset protections. Thursday, review all evidence and finalize legal response documents in case Derek filed his conservatorship petition. When I arrived home, Derek's truck was in the driveway. I could hear him inside talking loudly on the phone about some work issue. Emily was making dinner. Sophia and Jake were in the living room doing homework. Hi, Dad, Emily called from the kitchen. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Thanks, Emily. I'll wash up. I went to my room and locked the door. Then I opened my laptop and checked my financial accounts, making sure everything was secure. No unusual access attempts, no changes to account settings. Derek hadn't found a way in yet, but he was trying. I could see failed login attempts on several accounts, someone trying common passwords. My birth date, Margaret's name, Emily's birth date. Derek guessing desperately. He'd never guessed the actual passwords. I used randomized 30-character strings stored in encrypted password managers. After 40 years protecting client information, I knew security protocols that Derek couldn't imagine. Dinner was tense. Derek barely acknowledged me, eating quickly and disappearing to his home office. Emily tried to make conversation about the kids' school activities, but I could tell she sensed the tension between Derek and me. After dinner, I helped Emily with dishes while the kids watched TV. "Dad, is everything okay between you and Derek?" Emily asked quietly. "Why do you ask?" "He's been weird lately. Stressed, angry, he won't tell me what's wrong, and you seem distant too." "Emily, I need to ask you something. Has Derek discussed his financial situation with you? Do you know what he owes or what his income actually is?" She looked uncomfortable. "Not really. Derek handles the finances. He says it's better that way, less stressful for me. It's $28,400, none of it repaid. And last week, he demanded $5,000 more. When I said I didn't have it, he got physical. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I rolled up my sleeve, showing her the fading marks. Emily's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, Dad, I'm so sorry. Derek told me you'd had an argument, but he didn't say anything about getting physical. This is not okay." "There's more you need to know, Emily. But I need you to understand I'm telling you this because you're my daughter and I love you. I'm not trying to destroy your marriage. But I need to protect myself from Derek's actions." "What actions?" I glanced toward Derek's office, making sure he was still behind the closed door. Then, I showed Emily one of the photographs from Derek's laptop, the legal website about conservatorship proceedings. "Derek is planning to file a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. He's been researching how to become my conservator so he can control my finances. He's even drafted a document listing fabricated concerns about my mental state. None of it is true, Emily, but he's planning to use false evidence to have me declared incompetent." Emily stared at the photograph, her face going pale. "This can't be real. Derek wouldn't do this." "I took that photograph Saturday morning from his laptop. I have more evidence, emails to an attorney, weeks of browsing history on conservatorship fraud. He's serious about this, Emily." "But why? What would he gain?" "Control over whatever assets he thinks I have. Derek believes I'm a struggling retiree with some modest savings. He's planning to use conservatorship to access whatever money I've saved." "Do you have money he doesn't know about?" I made a decision in that moment. Emily deserved truth, even if it complicated everything. "Yes, I have significant assets that Derek doesn't know about. I've lived modestly since your mother died because I value privacy and because I wanted to see how people treated me without money influencing their behavior. But I'm not struggling financially, Emily. I'm very comfortable." "How comfortable?" "That's not important right now. What's important is that Derek is planning to commit conservatorship fraud against me, and I'm going to defend myself legally. I've hired attorneys, I've documented everything, and I'm going to make sure Derek faces consequences for what he's planning." Emily sat down heavily in a kitchen chair, her face in her hands. "This is insane. I can't believe Derek would do this. We need to talk to him. Maybe there's an explanation." "Emily, I have photographs of his laptop showing weeks of research on how to have someone declared incompetent. I have emails to lawyers. I have a draft document with fabricated claims about my mental state. There's no innocent explanation for this. Derek is planning fraud." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect myself. If Derek files the conservatorship petition, I'll fight it with evidence of his exploitation, his assault, and his fabrication of incompetency claims. I'll also pursue criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud." "Criminal charges?" "Dad, he's my husband. He's the father of your grandchildren. He physically assaulted me and is planning to commit conservatorship fraud. Those are crimes, Emily. I understand this is difficult for you, but Derek made these choices. I'm just responding to them." Emily was crying now. "What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to stay married to someone who did this?" "That's your decision, Emily. I'm not asking you to choose between Derek and me, but I am telling you the truth about what's happening so you can make informed decisions about your life." The office door opened. Derek emerged, saw Emily crying, saw me standing there. "What's going on?" "What did you say to her?" "I told her the truth," I said calmly, "about the money you've extracted from me, about the physical assault, and about your plan to file fraudulent conservatorship proceedings." Derek's face went white. "You went through my computer. Your laptop was open on the dining room table. I saw what you've been researching, conservatorship fraud, How to have someone declared incompetent, the fabricated evidence you're preparing, all of it. That's not, I wasn't, Derek stammered. Then his expression hardened. You have no right to go through my private files. You have no right to plan conservatorship fraud against me. But here we are. What do you want? I want you to leave, move out, end this situation before it gets worse for you. This is my house. Actually, it's the bank's house. You're 3 months behind on the mortgage, according to the notices I've seen in your mail. But regardless, I'm moving out. I'll be gone by the end of the week. And if you file that conservatorship petition, I'll destroy you legally. You'll face criminal charges, lose everything, and likely go to prison. That's what I want you to understand. Derek looked at Emily, then back at me. You think you can threaten me? I know you're broke, old man. You've got nothing. I smiled without warmth. That's your critical mistake, Derek. You assumed I'm broke. You built your entire scheme on that assumption. It's wrong, very wrong. And when you realize how wrong, you'll understand exactly how much trouble you're in. I walked to my bedroom, leaving Derek and Emily in the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Derek's voice, angry and defensive, and Emily's voice responding with something between sorrow and fury. Their marriage was ending. I felt badly about that. But Derek had made his choices. The next morning, I met Dr. Patricia Williams at her office for the cognitive evaluation. She spent 3 hours administering standardized tests measuring memory, problem-solving, executive function, and judgment. She asked me to remember lists of words, solve mathematical problems, explain proverbs, draw complex figures from memory, and answer questions testing knowledge and reasoning. When we finished, Dr. Williams reviewed the results. Mr. Pearson, you scored in the 95th percentile or above on every test. Your cognitive function is not just normal for your age, it's superior. Memory, excellent. Reasoning, excellent. Judgment, excellent. There is absolutely no evidence of any cognitive impairment whatsoever. Can you document that in a formal report? I can have a comprehensive evaluation report ready by tomorrow. Any conservatorship petition claiming you're mentally incompetent would be laughable once a judge sees these test results. Thank you. Please send the report to Angela Chen at Morrison & Chen. That afternoon, I met with my financial advisor, Stephen Walsh, at his office. Stephen was in his mid-40s, managed about $200 million in client assets, and had been handling my investments since Margaret's death. Robert, Angela Chen called and briefed me on the situation with your son-in-law. I've already implemented additional security protocols on all your accounts. No changes can be made without dual authentication using your phone and a secondary password only you know. Any access attempt from an unrecognized device will immediately alert both of us. Thank you, Stephen. I also need documentation showing I actively manage these accounts myself. Easy. I have records of every transaction you've initiated, every rebalancing decision you've made, every tax planning strategy you've implemented. You're more hands-on than most of my clients. Any claim that you're financially incompetent is absurd. Derek doesn't know these accounts exist. When he discovers them during any conservatorship proceeding, he's going to realize he attempted fraud against someone worth almost $5 million. Stephen whistled softly. That's going to end badly for him. Very badly. Wednesday evening, I packed my belongings. I'd already rented a small apartment across town, paid 6 months in advance, and arranged for movers to transport my few possessions on Thursday morning. I was leaving Emily's house, ending this chapter, and setting up a life where Derek had no access to me. Emily knocked on my bedroom door while I was packing. "Dad, can we talk?" "Of course." She sat on the edge of the bed, looking exhausted. I confronted Derek about everything, the money, the assault, the conservatorship plan. He denied it all at first. Then he admitted some of it. Then he got angry and blamed you for snooping through his computer. We've been fighting for 2 days straight. I'm sorry you're going through this, Emily. Are you really leaving? Yes, I've rented an apartment. I'm moving out tomorrow. This situation isn't healthy for any of us. Derek says you're overreacting, that the conservatorship research was just curiosity, not an actual plan, that you're paranoid. Emily, I have photographs of his draft document listing fabricated concerns about my competency. I have emails to an attorney about filing the petition. This wasn't curiosity. This was an active plan, and I'm not going to wait around for him to file it. What if I ask him not to? What if I make him promise to drop it? Would you trust that promise, given everything he's lied about already? She was quiet for a long moment. No, I wouldn't trust it. Then you understand why I'm leaving. Dad, are you really rich? Derek says you must have money hidden or you wouldn't be so defensive. Emily, I'm financially comfortable. More comfortable than my lifestyle suggested. I've lived modestly because I prefer privacy. But yes, I have significant assets that Derek didn't know about. How much? Enough to defend myself legally against anything Derek attempts. Enough to make sure he faces consequences if he tries conservatorship fraud. That's what matters. Emily started crying again. My marriage is falling apart. I'm sorry. I truly am. But Derek's choices caused this, not my response to them. He could have treated me with respect. He could have not extracted $30,000 from me. He could have not gotten physical. He could have not planned conservatorship fraud. Every step of this was his choice. What should I do? That's your decision, Emily. But my advice? Document everything. Get your own attorney. Understand your financial situation independently of what Derek tells you, and protect Sophia and Jake. They shouldn't be collateral damage in Derek's mistakes. I moved out Thursday morning. The apartment was small but sufficient. 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a living room with space for my desk and files. Quiet, private, mine. That afternoon, Angela Chen called. Robert, we've finalized all documentation. Dr. Williams's cognitive evaluation shows you're completely mentally competent. Stephen Walsh provided records proving you actively manage complex finances. We have your evidence of Derek's exploitation and assault, and we have the photographs proving his conservatorship fraud plan. If Derek files any petition, we're ready to destroy it immediately. Has he filed anything yet? No. Frank Morrison, the attorney Derek contacted, hasn't filed any conservatorship petitions. Either Derek's having second thoughts or he's waiting for the right moment. What should I do? Wait. Live your life. Stay alert. If Derek files, we'll know immediately and respond within hours. In the meantime, you're protected. Your assets are secure. Your competency is documented, and Derek knows you're aware of his plan, which makes him much less likely to proceed. I spent the next 2 weeks settling into my new apartment, establishing new routines, and living independently. Emily called several times, updating me on her situation with Derek. They were separated, sleeping in different rooms, barely speaking. She'd consulted with a divorce attorney. Derek was alternating between apologetic and hostile. He keeps asking about your finances, Emily told me during one call. He wants to know how much you actually have. I told him I don't know, and it's none of his business. Thank you for that. Dad, if this goes to divorce, Derek's attorney is going to ask questions about why you lived with us, whether you paid rent, whether we supported you financially. What should I say? Tell the truth. I lived there for 2.5 years. I contributed money when asked. Derek characterized those contributions as rent after the fact, but they were requested as loans or emergency help. Your attorney can subpoena my bank records showing every payment I made to Derek. The truth favors you, Emily, not Derek. 3 weeks after I moved out, Derek filed papers, not a conservatorship petition, divorce papers. Emily had beaten him to it. She filed first, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting primary custody of Sophia and Jake. Angela called to tell me. Emily's attorney subpoenaed Derek's financial records as part of the divorce discovery. He's going to have to disclose the $28,000 he took from you. That's going to look very bad in a custody hearing, especially combined with the assault and the conservatorship fraud attempt. Will Emily be okay financially? Her attorney is good. She'll get the house, primary custody, and likely a favorable support arrangement. Derek's going to lose almost everything. And once the conservatorship fraud evidence becomes part of the divorce record, he might face criminal investigation. 4 weeks after the divorce filing, Derek's attorney called Angela asking if I would agree to a meeting. No recording, no legal proceedings, just a conversation to clear up misunderstandings. Angela called me. They want to talk. That usually means they know they're in trouble and want to negotiate. Do you want to meet? Yes, but with you present, and I want it on the record. The meeting was held at Morrison and Chen's offices on a cold December afternoon. Derek arrived with his attorney, a man named Paul Henderson, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Angela, Michael Morrison, and I sat across the conference table. Mr. Pearson, Henderson began, my client wants to apologize for any misunderstandings that may have occurred. He acknowledges that his financial requests were inappropriate and that his research into conservatorship matters was ill-advised. He's prepared to sign documents promising no further contact with you and acknowledging he has no claim to any of your assets. In exchange for, Angela asked, in exchange for Mr. Pearson not pursuing criminal charges for elder abuse or providing evidence of the conservatorship research to the divorce court. I looked at Derek. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. No deal, I said. Derek physically assaulted me. He extracted nearly $30,000 through manipulation and coercion. He planned conservatorship fraud with fabricated evidence. Those actions have consequences. I'm not negotiating them away. Henderson looked at Derek, then back at me. Mr. Pearson, my client is facing loss of custody of his children, significant financial penalties in the divorce, and potential criminal charges. Isn't that enough punishment? That's not punishment. Those are the natural consequences of his choices. Punishment would be me doing something vindictive. I'm just ensuring the legal system functions properly. What do you want? I want Derek to face appropriate legal consequences for his actions. I want Emily and my grandchildren protected from any further harm. And I want documentation that prevents Derek from ever attempting anything like this again. Those aren't negotiable. The meeting ended without agreement. Derek and his attorney left, looking grim. Angela smiled at me after they'd gone. You just rejected a settlement that would have made this go away quietly. Most people in your position would have taken it. Most people aren't CPAs who spent 40 years ensuring fraudsters faced consequences. Derek made calculated choices to exploit me. He should face calculated consequences. He will. The divorce court will hear everything. And I'm recommending we provide evidence to the State Attorney General's office for criminal investigation of attempted conservatorship fraud. Derek's going to face consequences, serious ones. I drove back to my apartment, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not satisfaction exactly. Not happiness about Derek's situation. Just the calm that comes from knowing you've handled something correctly. Derek had assumed I was weak, vulnerable, easy to exploit. He'd been wrong about all of it, and now he'd learn what happens when you target someone who knows exactly how to defend themselves. The war wasn't over yet, but Derek had already lost. He just didn't fully realize it yet. So far, Robert exposed Derek's conservatorship fraud plan after documenting $28,400 in financial exploitation and physical assault. With attorney Angela Chen, Robert proved his complete mental competency, 95th percentile scores, and secured his $4.7 million in hidden assets. After revealing Derek's scheme to Emily, Robert moved out while Emily filed for divorce. Derek's attorney attempted settlement, but Robert rejected it, insisting Derek face full legal consequences. Now, the final destruction of Derek's scheme unfolds in court. The State Attorney General's office opened a criminal investigation into Derek's attempted conservatorship fraud 6 weeks after Angela provided them with evidence. Assistant Attorney General Maria Santos called me personally to discuss the case. Mr. Pearson, we've reviewed your documentation. The evidence of attempted conservatorship fraud is compelling. We're particularly concerned about the fabricated incompetency claims. This appears to be a calculated attempt to exploit an elderly person through fraudulent court proceedings. That's exactly what it was, I confirmed. We'd like to pursue criminal charges, wire fraud, attempted theft by deception, and elder abuse. Are you willing to testify if this goes to trial? Absolutely. I documented everything specifically so it could be used in legal proceedings. Good. We'll be filing charges within 2 weeks. The criminal charges were filed on January 14th. Derek was arrested at his apartment, charged with 3 felonies: attempted conservatorship fraud, elder financial exploitation, and assault on a person over 65. The bail was set at $50,000. Derek's parents posted it, though I heard later they were furious about what he'd done. The divorce proceedings moved forward simultaneously with the criminal case. Emily's attorney, Rachel Morrison, Michael Morrison's daughter coincidentally, was methodical and ruthless. She subpoenaed Derek's financial records, employment history, and communications. What she found painted a devastating picture. Derek had lost 3 sales jobs in 8 years due to poor performance. He had $37,000 in credit card debt Emily hadn't known about. He'd taken out a second mortgage on the house without telling Emily, using the money for gambling at Mohegan Sun Casino. He'd borrowed money from his parents, Emily's aunt, 2 friends, and me, none of which had been repaid. "Your son-in-law is a financial disaster," Rachel told me during a preparation meeting for my deposition. "He's been living beyond his means for years, extracting money from everyone around him and hiding the extent of his debts." Emily had no idea how bad things were. "How's Emily handling all this?" "She's devastated but determined. She wants primary custody, the house, and complete financial separation from Derek. Given his criminal charges and financial deception, she'll get everything she's asking for." My deposition for the divorce case was held in February. Derek's attorney, Paul Henderson, questioned me for 3 hours about the money I'd given Derek, trying to characterize it as rent or legitimate expenses I owed. "Mr. Pearson, isn't it true you lived rent-free in my client's home for 2.5 years?" "No, I was invited to live there by my daughter. I contributed to household expenses when asked, but Derek characterized those contributions as loans or emergency help until last November when he retroactively called them rent. But you were living in their home, using their utilities, eating their food." "I was living with my daughter and grandchildren in an arrangement Emily wanted. Derek agreed to it, and I gave him $28,400 over that period, which is approximately $650 per month. That's reasonable contribution for room and board, had that been the original agreement. But it wasn't. Derek requested specific amounts for specific claim needs, then never repaid any of it as promised." "You have documentation of these requests?" "Extensive documentation. Every request, every amount, every broken promise to repay. 40 years as a CPA taught me to document financial transactions thoroughly." Henderson tried different angles, suggesting I was financially exploiting Emily and Derek by living there, implying I was mentally declining and confused about the arrangements, claiming I was vindictive toward Derek for unspecified reasons. None of it worked. I had documentation of everything, spoke clearly and precisely, and remained calm throughout. At the end, Henderson asked, "Mr. Pearson, isn't it true you're worth significantly more than you've claimed? That you've been hiding assets?" "I'm not hiding assets. I'm maintaining financial privacy, which is my right. My actual net worth is none of Derek's business unless he's attempting conservatorship fraud to access it, which is exactly what your client was doing." The divorce trial was held in April. I attended as a witness, sitting in the gallery watching Emily testify about Derek's deception, his hidden debts, his aggressive behavior toward me, and her concerns about his stability around their children. Derek testified in his own defense, claiming he'd been a good husband and father, that the money from me was legitimate repayment for housing costs, that his conservatorship research was idle curiosity, not actual planning. He claimed Emily was overreacting to financial stress and that I'd poisoned her against him. Rachel Morrison destroyed him on cross-examination. "Mr. Sullivan, you testified the money from Mr. Pearson was legitimate rent, but in November you told Mr. Pearson it was repayment for past loans you'd given him." "Which is true," Derek stumbled. I may have misspoken. You also testified you were researching conservatorship out of curiosity, but you emailed attorney Frank Morrison asking specifically about filing a petition for Mr. Pearson. That's not curiosity, that's planning, isn't it? I was just exploring options. Options for what? Mr. Pearson is completely mentally competent. He scored in the 95th percentile on cognitive testing, so what options were you exploring? I thought maybe he was declining. You thought wrong because you fabricated evidence of decline. We have the draft document you created listing false concerns about Mr. Pearson's competency. You wrote, forgets conversations, confused about dates, poor judgment with money. All lies, weren't they? I might have been mistaken. You weren't mistaken, Mr. Sullivan. You were planning fraud. The judge, Jennifer Walsh, listened to everything with increasing disapproval. When testimony concluded, she took 30 minutes to review documents, then delivered her ruling. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've encountered in family court. Mr. Sullivan systematically deceived his wife about their financial situation, extracted money from his elderly father-in-law through manipulation and coercion, physically assaulted Mr. Pearson, and planned conservatorship fraud to access assets he had no right to. This behavior demonstrates profound lack of judgment, integrity, and respect for family. Judge Walsh granted Emily everything she had requested: primary physical custody of Sophia and Jake, with Derek getting supervised visitation every other weekend. Emily retained the house, the car, and all marital assets. Derek was ordered to pay child support of $1,200 monthly despite his limited income. He was also ordered to repay the $28,400 to me over 5 years. Mr. Sullivan, understand this clearly, Judge Walsh said. You betrayed your family's trust in the worst possible way. Your children are better off with limited contact with you until you demonstrate significant behavioral change. This court will monitor your visitation closely. Derek sat frozen as the ruling was read. His attorney had warned him this might happen, but Derek apparently hadn't believed it. Now, he'd lost his family, his home, his financial security, all because he'd been too greedy and too stupid to realize who he was targeting. The criminal trial began in June. Assistant Attorney General Maria Santos prosecuted with clinical efficiency. She presented my documentation of Derek's exploitation, the photographs of bruises from his assault, the screenshots from his laptop showing conservatorship fraud research, and his emails to attorney Frank Morrison. Dr. Patricia Williams testified about my cognitive evaluation results. Mr. Pearson demonstrated no impairment whatsoever. His cognitive function is superior for his age. Any claim of incompetency is completely baseless. Stephen Walsh, my financial advisor, testified about my active management of complex investments. Mr. Pearson makes sophisticated financial decisions independently. He understands portfolio theory, tax planning, and asset allocation better than most people half his age. The idea that he's financially incompetent is absurd. Derek's defense attorney, a public defender named James Chen, Derek couldn't afford Henderson anymore, tried to argue Derek had genuinely believed I was declining and was researching conservatorship to help me, not exploit me. But the fabricated evidence document destroyed that defense. How does researching conservatorship help someone if you're inventing false evidence of decline? Santos asked during closing arguments. Derek Sullivan wasn't trying to help his father-in-law. He was trying to steal from him. The evidence proves it conclusively. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on all 3 counts: attempted conservatorship fraud, elder financial exploitation, and assault. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Santos filed a sentencing memorandum arguing for significant prison time, given the calculated nature of Derek's crimes and the vulnerability of his target. Chen filed counter-memorandums requesting probation based on Derek's lack of serious prior criminal history and his family obligations. The sentencing hearing was held on a hot July afternoon. I sat in the gallery with Emily beside me. She'd brought a letter to the judge describing how Derek's actions had affected her and the children. Derek sat at the defense table looking 20 pounds thinner, his face gray and defeated. Judge Thomas Rodriguez reviewed the pre-sentence report, then looked at Derek. Mr. Sullivan, you targeted your elderly father-in-law for financial exploitation. You extracted nearly $30,000 through manipulation. You physically assaulted him, and you planned conservatorship fraud to steal assets you believed he had. These crimes demonstrate predatory behavior toward a family member who should have been able to trust you. He paused, reviewing sentencing guidelines. For elder financial exploitation, I sentence you to 4 years in state prison. For assault on a person over 65, I sentence you to 18 months to run consecutively. For attempted conservatorship fraud, I sentence you to 2 years to run consecutively. Total sentence, 7.5 years in Connecticut State Prison. You'll be eligible for parole after serving 85% of your sentence, which is 6 years and 4 months. 7.5 years. Derek would be 45 when released. His life, as he'd known it, was over. Additionally, Judge Rodriguez continued, you are ordered to pay restitution of $28,100 to Robert Pearson. You are permanently prohibited from filing any conservatorship or guardianship petition concerning Mr. Pearson, and you are required to complete financial management counseling before any parole consideration. Derek was handcuffed and led away. He didn't look at me or Emily, just stared straight ahead as the bailiff guided him out. Emily cried quietly beside me. He destroyed everything, his relationship with the kids, our marriage, his freedom, all for money he didn't even get. He made choices, Emily. Bad choices driven by greed. This is what happens when you try to exploit people you should respect. After the sentencing, Angela Chen met me outside the courthouse. 7.5 years. That's a strong sentence for these crimes. The judge clearly took elder exploitation seriously. Good. Derek needs to understand his actions have consequences. How are you doing through all this? I'm fine. My life is stable. My finances are secure. My relationship with Emily and the grandchildren is strong. Derek's the one who lost everything, not me. Life settled into new patterns over the following months. I saw Emily and the kids regularly. Sophia and Jake, now 9 and 7, adjusted to the divorce surprisingly well. Emily explained that Derek had made very bad choices and had to face consequences, but that didn't mean he didn't love them. They accepted supervised visits with Derek every other weekend, though both kids seemed more comfortable when they didn't have to go. Emily sold the house Derek had mortgaged heavily and moved into a smaller, more manageable home she could afford. She went back to work part-time as a paralegal, using skills from her pre-marriage career. She dated occasionally but focused primarily on rebuilding her life and raising her children. Dad, I need to thank you, Emily said one evening over dinner at my apartment, for documenting everything, for protecting yourself legally, for not letting Derek get away with what he planned. If you'd just let it go, he would have filed that conservatorship petition. He would have taken everything from you. I protected myself because 40 years as a CPA taught me how, but I also protected you and the kids. Derek's crimes would have escalated. Better to stop him now than wait until he did something worse. Were you ever going to tell me about your money? The $4 million you have? Eventually. Probably when I wrote my will, or if you ever needed financial help, urgently. But I wanted to know people treated me respectfully without money influencing them. Derek failed that test completely. What are you going to do with it? The money? Live comfortably. Travel. Help you and the kids when appropriate. Eventually, leave most of it to you and the grandchildren, but on my timeline, not because someone tried to steal it. 2 years after Derek went to prison, I received my first restitution payment from him, $37.60. Prison wages applied to court-ordered restitution. At that rate, Derek would repay his debt in approximately 22 years. I deposited the check without comment. The money didn't matter. The principal did. I'm now 67 years old. I live comfortably in my apartment, volunteer at a senior center teaching financial literacy, and spend time with Emily and my grandchildren. I travel occasionally, Italy last year, Japan this spring. I've dated a few women my age, though nothing serious. Mostly I enjoy the quiet independence of retirement done right. What I learned from this experience is that documentation saves lives, literally. If I hadn't kept detailed records of Derek's exploitation, hadn't photographed bruises from his assault, hadn't captured screenshots of his conservatorship fraud research, he might have succeeded. He might have had me declared incompetent, seized control of my assets, and stolen everything I'd built over 40 years. But I documented everything, because 40 years as a CPA taught me that documentation protects truth, prevents fraud, and ensures justice. Those principles worked in professional practice. They worked against Derek's exploitation. If you're facing similar exploitation from family members, if someone is pressuring you financially or planning conservatorship fraud, remember this: document everything. Keep records of every financial transaction, every inappropriate request, every threat or assault. Take photographs, save emails and text messages, build a timeline, create evidence that can't be disputed. Then get professional help. Elder law attorneys like Angela Chen exist specifically to protect against exploitation. They understand conservatorship fraud, financial abuse, and how to defend vulnerable people. Don't wait until a petition is filed. Act preemptively when you see warning signs. Also understand this: hiding wealth isn't dishonest, it's strategic privacy. I wasn't lying about my finances. I was simply not volunteering information that was none of Derek's business. That privacy protected me, because Derek built his entire scheme on false assumptions about my net worth and my ability to defend myself. He assumed I was weak, broke, and declining. He was catastrophically wrong on all 3 points, and those wrong assumptions destroyed him. Derek will be released from prison when he's 45 years old with a felony record, destroyed reputation, and permanent estrangement from his children who grew up barely knowing him. He'll owe me $28,000 he'll never finish repaying. He'll be prohibited from ever attempting conservatorship proceedings against me. And he'll be known forever as the man who tried to defraud his elderly father-in-law and went to prison for it. I'll be 73 when Derek is released, still mentally sharp, still financially secure, still living independently, still enjoying relationships with Emily and my grandchildren. Still winning. Because integrity outlasts greed. Documentation defeats fraud, and quiet competence beats loud exploitation every time. Derek thought he was hunting easy prey. He was actually confronting someone who'd spent 40 years protecting people from fraud. He thought I was weak because I appeared modest. He confused humility with vulnerability. That confusion cost him everything. I sleep well at night. Derek sleeps in a prison cell. That's not cruelty, that's consequence. And that's exactly how it should be.